Welcome to Stop the Pandemic edition and a discussion on surviving and thriving during these times of COVID. I have here with me John Domante, who I'll introduce in a moment. We just need to read through a disclaimer, as there will be some financial content inside this. So this webinar is provided for general information purposes only, does not constitute legal or professional advice. No user should act on the basis of any material contained in the webinar without consulting proper legal and or other professional advice specific to their situation. Razzoo is making this webinar and handout electronically available on demand on the condition that the member or paying user will only use the materials internally. This means that outside the user's organisations, the materials will not be copied, sent, emailed, distributed, shared or further reproduced in any way. Internal use excludes the use by the user's own member organisations who operate under a unique charitable number/extension and issue their own receipts. Excellent. So I'm going to introduce to you John Domante, my co-speaker today. So John started his finance journey as a mortgage broker in 2003 before gaining experience as an asset finance provider, banker, and then a relationship manager for Medfin, a specialist division of NAB, managing a portfolio of medical and allied health professionals. John has an extensive knowledge in mortgage management, commercial and construction finance, asset finance, and is a specialist medical finance consultant. His focus is on providing the highest possible levels of service as well as value add to a client's business by also providing insights into industry's best practices and utilising his extensive network of professionals that he has the privilege to work with. So welcome, John.
Thank you, Grace. And Dr. Grace Lai is a founding manager and director of Periot Partners, which provides education, software and services to health practices to deliver seamless and efficient healthcare. Grace graduated with a Bachelor in Infotech distinction, not to mention, from the Co-op Scholarship Program at the University of Technology in Sydney, and graduated with a Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery in Honours at Uni of Sydney as well in 2008. And prior to her medical training, she undertook senior roles in market analysis, marketing and sales operations for Australia and APAC, including Japan-based companies. And she started her own medical services business in 2015, which is fantastic.
And one of them was Medi Business, actually, that came out of it. So what can you tell us a little bit about the businesses that we're representing here today?
Okay, so between us, I guess we run the three organisations. Razzoo is a healthcare loans specialist, so it's actually in the business of providing the loans. Myself, I run Electo Finance, which is, I guess, semi-related to Razzoo in the sense that we provide healthcare finance broking services. So we have access to about 70 different lenders, and within those, depending on what you need, is bound to be a lender that can suit whatever your requirements are. Yourself, Grace?
Yeah, Medi Business is, I have the privilege of working with Leanne Bose, and we have formed Medi Business together. Leanne has an extensive amount of experience in consulting, particularly in GP radiology services, and I've come to it complementing on the surgical and now dental side of things as well. So I think between us, we probably cover most of the medical and allied health practice. So it's an extensive portfolio of essentially what comes into strategy and operations brief, and that's really the area that business owners, especially healthcare business owners that want to run a clinic or a network, the idea of scaling and how do you actually scale through the 6 stages of business so that you can actually have a decent exit by the end of it.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
So I know we're talking today about surviving and thriving in post-COVID, but other free webinar series that will be coming up that we'll be talking about as well are those the ones on the screen. So innovation in healthcare, the 6 Ds and vibrant new areas, we'll talk specifically about JobKeeper as well in a separate one, and how that affects you and if you've done the calculations for it. And how business is also fighting COVID-19. There's some amazing examples of what other businesses are doing, and not only just really fighting it, but also making the most of it. And there's also going to be a session on teleconferencing for healthcare workers. Within these ones as well, that we're going to be bringing on board industry experts in legal, finance, financial planning, and risk, and amongst others, accounting as well.
And it's great to see your network really come together and support us, because business is different, isn't it, John?
It is, and you actually generally need a team. There's a reason why the biggest companies in the world have a board of directors and then also have an advisory board. It's really bringing together the strengths that every person has, and the skill set of different industries. So you're essentially bringing hundreds of years of experience and expertise into looking at a particular topic or challenge or problem, which is amazing. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think that this is an opportunity, from what we've seen of our clients, this is an opportunity for them to really rethink their business, even going back to first principles of why they started the business in the first place. And then to pull these plans forward that they had. So the things that they've always wanted to do, everything from, we always wanted to, in order to think about this new product line, or we always wanted to restructure the way we delivered that service. This is a unique time in which, for a number of healthcare services business, more than 90% of their workforce is stood down. They are operating at perhaps 10% of what they usually did before this. And this is a great opportunity in order for them to go, okay, start from scratch. Let's rethink what this business has to look like. So the content of this discussion is really going to be a quick overview. I mean, that's what we can cover in less than half an hour. But I wanted to talk from our experience. And for me, that's about how we helped our clients plan the response and the recovery to COVID. And I've asked John to really think about the cash flow challenges that healthcare businesses are facing, and he's definitely the expert to talk about this. We're going to briefly cover also creditworthiness, because I know that there has been a number of questions that have come through about how that thinking has changed. So if you haven't headed over to MediBusiness, so that's medibusiness.com.au, there is a free resilience checklist it's essentially a conversation starter amongst you and your senior leadership. And I'm talking to you as if, you're a healthcare business owner. It may be true that you're like some of our other clients where they actually run a series of clinics or investments in different parts of healthcare at the same time. And these are all questions that, your healthcare team should actually help you address. When we talk about what's happening in the market, I think that there's a couple of models that I've seen of thinking about it, but the one that I think is going to bear up is the one where it draws an analogy between the response with COVID and the way it's spreading to biological curves. Some people may have seen it described as waves, but I mean, the reality is that in naturally occurring phenomena, in natural disasters, even in situations where, unfortunately, events have occurred, it's not just the first wave that hits that has the biggest impact. It's actually the second wave that makes it much more lethal. We saw that with tsunamis. We saw that with the Spanish flu, terrorist attacks. It's the fact that during the first phase, you have people maxing out to a point where they've thrown all their resources at it. They've tried to get to a point where they've actually gotten back to controlling the situation, and then the other wave hits. And when we talk about COVID, what we are anticipating, I think, and what we're trying to tell our clients to anticipate is that, right now we have social distancing. Yeah, it's really tough. There's a lot of fear out there. And in Australia, I guess we're really lucky that in terms of actual case numbers and percentage deaths, we've been able to flatten that curve quite considerably. Now, I mean, the risk, of course, is that in the next 2-3 weeks, the government bows to pressure and lets up on its social distancing requirements. And then we'll see a second wave come through, which will tax businesses even more so, especially if during this phase you take up things like JobKeeper, or you tax your cash flow reserves, getting into a position where you can actually go back to business as usual, and business absolutely doesn't turn back into what is usual. So, you know, when we started planning the responses, we talk about responding in stages, but recovering in waves. So a response in stages might be that you look at the conditions that sets it off, your kind of response during it, and you know, I'll give the example here that, you know, for one of the clients, you know, we definitely started stockpiling, then we went into Team A, Team B, we went down to skeleton staff, and of course we planned for a complete shutdown, or majority network shutdown by the fourth and fifth stages. But we're going to explode that response out. You can see that there's actually different nuances, and this is what, you know, the best people in the industry are actually doing. That, you know, once you've stabilized the situation, sorry, I'll just go back one slide. So what we see here is that in stage 3, you can actually explode this stage out and think about your response in stages. So if you can actually structure your response, you can think about, you know, how do you actually stabilize your company, get to a point where essentially you've managed to calm the staff and have clear communication as to where things are going, to understand the cash flow. Once you're in that position, I think that really clears the way for you to rethink your business, rethink about what it is that you actually wanted to achieve through this business, rethink what the business means to your clients and your customers after coming out of this situation. And I think there's a really big opportunity in order for us in healthcare to use that technology and innovate. So yes, it doesn't have to be amazing things. In fact, you know, the majority of the technology that's demanded by patients these days is just the simple ability in order to book online without having to talk to anyone. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can, and you know, there's an entire conversation that John and I are going to have in an upcoming free webinar, just on the things that we're seeing in terms of innovation coming up. And then think about your go-to-market strategy. It's really important in order to make sure that you have your staff and your cash flow on board. So again, when we talk about responses, we talk about stages, but we talk about recovery in waves, and that's really like, I mean, the analogy is like, I guess, an ocean, and you think about the ocean pulling back, and there always being the same kind of water, and then redistributing that water into different parts of the beach. So marshal your resources and plan your deployment of people, basically, in response to different conditions. If you go back through the idea of there being a number of waves of responses or waves of outbreaks in COVID, talk to your management team, talk to us about how your plan will actually look and change as different parts of the COVID responses accelerates and dips. So over to you, John, about cash flow.
So yeah, so I guess with one really important consideration is obviously the cash flow of the business to make sure it's still viable during this time. Understanding that there are aspects of the healthcare system that are overworked, and it's generally your emergency responses teams. But within the GP land, what we've seen is there's actually been a massive divide, I guess, with the ones that have embraced innovation and things like telehealth, and those guys that are reticent to be doing it. And there are businesses which are thriving and busy and doing more work than they ever have, albeit maybe at a less revenue per patient. But there's also those that are really struggling. And this is, I guess, where cash flow and looking at cash flow and what you can do during this time is really important. Businesses will change and, have changed forever, coming out of COVID as well. And I guess what I've put here in a little infographic is assistance that the different parts of the government and everything else have sort of pulled together. So part of this, I guess, of managing your cash flow is the heavily publicised things like the federal government package, which includes the $130 billion JobKeeper payments. On top of that, each state government has sort of done their own little economic stimulus as well, or little as in huge. But for example, like Victorian government has allowed for payroll tax refunds for the whole year. There's land tax deferrals as well. Within there, they've also providing the code for rent relief. And what's sort of sometimes gets missed is the availability of the small business grants that's available. This also flows into a lot of local councils and governments that are actually assisting with those types of small business grants as well. Being in Melbourne, the ones that I most sort of understand is, for example, the City of Melbourne have got they've actually got small business grants for separate ones for IT, for capital works, training and professional development, and I think this may be mirrored in most of the local governments as well. So your best bet is to actually check what's available in your state and in your local government to see what it is that that you have available to you. Also speak to your accountant, because there's quite a fair bit from the ATO as well. Obviously, things like the instant asset write-off and accelerated depreciation. But the one that you should really talk to them about as well is, to help maintain your cash flow is the deferral or possible deferral of your GST payments and PAYG withholding. In some cases, we've had clients that have been successful in deferring those payments for up to 12 months. You still have to pay them, but they're being able to defer it without any sort of general interest accrued at that time, which is a massive help. It also, you could actually use that to your advantage as well, with being able to accelerate those payments if you do have any sort of tax owing, without the possibility of getting that extra interest. But again, talk to your accountant or your tax agent regarding those, and you're using that as a possible strategy. The banks and other financial institutions have also come to the party. It's really different than the COVID stuff, because in most other sort of, I guess, like if you think back to the GFC and everything else, everyone was really all in it for themselves, whereas in this case, everyone seems to be pulling together. Even the banks and are sort of helping out with their own little I guess small business relief packages as well. Generally, you've got that that up to $250,000 lending. There are some caveats to that as well, though, and make sure that if you really think about it, essentially it's you get the first 6 months as interest free, and then you've got 2.5 years to pay it off. So generally, the structure of those, the next 6 months is interest only, and then after that, you've got 2 years to pay it down. If you're borrowing $250,000, just bear in mind you have to pay that down over 2 years. So that can be a big imposter burden on your cash flow as well, if you qualify for that. We assist with those types of things via Electo Finance. So, feel free to ask questions about that in greater detail, because there are a few nuances in that, and depending on the lender that you go with. The big one as well is, the deferral of repayments as well, that the banks have offered. This is for, your small, so your business loans, and also your home loans as well, the personal side, but they are treated differently. Each bank has, especially in the business side, has a different way of doing things. The two main ones are a straight deferral. So essentially you hit the pause button and then you've extended your loan term by another 6 months. And then there's the other way of thinking, which some lenders have done, which is just, no payments for the next, say, up to 6 months, but then those payments are going to be capitalized into the loan for the remainder of the term, which increases, your minimum monthly repayments potentially,
Yep.
which makes it, even more expensive. So again, it's another factor to sort of consider, and not just sort of go blindly and go, hey, everyone's getting their loans deferred. if you can afford it, probably not the best way to just defer it for the sake of deferring, because in those cases, you're actually just increasing your repayments in the long term as well. The other thing that's available is landlord and rent relief. There's a mandatory code of conduct, between commercial landlords and tenants, but this is, while the federal government has sort of mentioned this, it's sort of up to the states to sort of structure it into their own way of how they see that. This includes deferral and also potential waiver of rent as well. The difference being deferral, you still have to make payments, but waiver is, permanent waiver of that rent as well. But with those, again, it's pretty loosely based at the moment. I know the Victorian government and a few others governments are legislating on that. I think the Victorian government is sometime the week that's starting the 20th. They're sort of putting that through legislation. But again, yeah, it's one of those ones that if you want to talk to offline, we could probably maybe assist with that as well. Taking all of these into consideration, you've also really, you need to talk to your financial advisors about whether it's your accountant, your financial planner, or if you're lucky enough to have a CFO within your business, really look at your, and do a really thorough cash flow analysis and budget, or worst case scenario budget at the moment, and really go through and see what is essential and non-essential expenditure, and taking into account, if you're going to be, I guess, deferring payments, what that looks like, not just now or in the next 6 months, but what that looks like moving forward as well. It's a great time to actually, work on your business instead of in your business that most of us unfortunately have to do. And then the other part of that cash flow analysis is, I guess, innovating and possibly, pivoting part of your business as well to sort of go, hey, these are other high value products that we can still, or maybe we're underutilizing, for example, and then really focus on how you add value and, extending and making the most of those products or services that you may have as an ancillary product initially, but now you can, turn into a bigger part of your business while the other parts of your business are either shut down or limited. And I guess that's a whole section there that we could talk about, innovation as well. The main part really with all this and cash flow is, making sure that your credit worthiness of your business is maintained during this time.
Yeah, Jen, before we go into credit worthiness, I thought it'd be worth mentioning that, like with the cash flow analysis and budget for MediBusiness, for our clients, we've even looked to like what's the operating costs on a daily basis for our clients. So it's definitely something that we can help you with if you're finding that your accountant is not able to get their head around, what the actual operating nuances for your particular business or across the different sets of clinics. Then come to us and we'll have a chat about how we can help you. And I thought it was really interesting, like with Razzoo, we could actually speak about the fact that, Razzoo started off as a healthcare loan online lender, essentially, right? Just as a platform in which people can apply for the most basic of loans. But can you comment about how Razzoo's essentially had to pivot through the COVID response?
Yeah, so I guess it initially started off as this great AI machine learning sort of automated lending platform, which was able to, which it's still the case, but I think what we've noticed is there's a greater need there to be able to provide advice and assist in the community as well. Just because of how uncertain everything is at the moment, and the varied responses. I guess it depends on people's mindsets as well, but of what each business is doing, and it's really pivoting more towards building that ecosystem of your expert advisors, but also your peers as well, and being able to put them together and I guess share experiences and skills to help benefit the whole Razzoo and medical community as well. purely from from that business point, but also just seeing trends and things like that as well, that's happening not just here in Victoria or in Australia, but I guess in other markets around the world as well, and being able to share that. Yeah,
that's wonderful. So, John, have you seen the way that lenders calculate credit worthiness? Has that changed in any way?
It has a little bit. Certain lenders are saying it's business as usual, but that is quickly changing. So a lot of businesses that are in the industries that have been shut down, some lenders have just said, no, we're not lending to them until the time comes that they're back up and running again. But essentially, there's a few questions here, but with every and you'll see it more and more. It's only still being introduced now with the different lenders. Apart from your typical questions about servicing the loan and how much you could borrow, these are the additional questions that are now being asked by the lenders. Tell me about the impact of your jobs, or impact to your job, or or to your business of COVID-19. Has your employer given you any indication that this may result in reduced hours? All these other types of questions there as well. They're going to be asking, and whoever you're speaking to, I guess it's part of responsible lending as well. But it's also a really good way to sort of think about whether or not you should be going for this loan in the first place at this point in time, if you are going to be impacted by these, or whether or not you use it as a way to move ahead or look at opportunities within this time to go ahead. One thing I do need to mention though is we mentioned earlier about the deferral of payments. Generally, if you were to do that, it's usually done via the hardship sort of pathway within the lenders. With that usually also means that your credit rating generally takes a hit. Whereas in this case, what's sort of been agreed by everyone, even the credit reporting agencies, is that this whole COVID thing, because it's so, I guess, unusual, is that it doesn't actually impact your credit worthiness if you're asking, for the deferral of loans and things like that as well. So, if it is something that you can use, definitely go for it, because it's essentially what everyone's doing is looking at it as just literally hitting the pause button on the economy, and then in 6 months' time, or however long it is that we go back to it, hitting play again, and then everything goes back to normal, as normal would look like at that time. So just bear that in mind. It's not going to be affecting your credit worthiness when you're doing that. It's essentially just keeping you as if you were pre-COVID, essentially. So if you're struggling, then I guess you're going to be struggling. But if you're successful, don't think that by going and deferring your loans, it's going to affect your credit worthiness in the future.
Good point. Yeah.
So that's, I guess, the main sort of key takeout there as well is, with those cash flow strategies, it's a fantastic way really to, use it as an opportunity to grow your business in this time when, people are sitting around and working from home and probably not doing as much, maybe fixing up their decking in the backyard or whatever else it is as well. So, yeah.
It's absolutely true. I think that this is a great opportunity to start moving whilst everybody else is sleeping. And I can tell how excited you and I are about wanting to talk about our next topic, which is on innovation. So let's just wrap up for everybody that's listening to this. What are the 5 important decisions that John and I are suggesting that you spend some time this weekend looking at? So assess your cash, and our consultants are here to support your business with assessing the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak. If you feel like you need some additional advice, you feel like you need a compass or somebody that's experienced, then absolutely talk to Electo Finance for your orientation around what it is that is available to you through the government, what is possible as well, refinancing. If it's a calculation issue, very happy to help you through MediBusiness as well. MediBusiness has put together a COVID resilience assessment for free. use that in order to talk to your team, to talk to your spouse, talk to everybody that basically is supposed to come in on this journey with you, in order to orient yourself around some of the really key aspects of surviving and thriving during this time. Revisit why you started the business in the first place, and I think that's really key. You could watch Start With Why with Simon Sinek, etc. But this is an opportunity to reset your business, and that all starts with you as the business owner, getting back in touch with what makes you excited about what you do and what it is that you do really well, unlike anyone else inside that industry or even anyone inside your team. So you start redefining your role within the business as to what it is that you do well. And then from that, I guess, is look at the bits of your business that you've always wanted to change. So John and I will be running a series of offerings along with the other Razzoo consultants for the community. And there will be a Disrupt Pandemic Response and Recovery Planner and a workshop. And for those who apply, the roundtable, and we'll get to that, what those offerings are in a moment. And finally, I think the fifth thing to think about this weekend is decide who comes on that journey with you. Are they the right partner, the right team member, do they have the right attitude? Do they actually lift you up? It's a really important time in order to remain positive, isn't it, John?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those ones where I guess you're the sum of the people around you. So, try to surround yourself with, people who are on that journey with you that will help you thrive and not just, survive, really.
Excellent. So what can we do to help you on that process of surviving and thriving? So we have a series of Disrupt Pandemic courses. They're available for access through medibusiness.com.au. These are 5 courses that take you through the theory and the structure of business planning in a crisis, including communications to your internal and external stakeholders. John will be, what he's just presented on cash flow is just a snapshot of what will actually be expounded out through the cash flow section. Your people, who are absolutely your most critical assets. And, with the prediction that more than 20% of the businesses in each of these industries will actually drop out of the market, there are going to be a lot of really good resources that will come back into the market. So that means that for every 7 people that you have currently vying for the active job, that might actually go from 7 to 10 to 15x, even 15 people vying for that job. So it's all very well trying to pick out the best people, but what training do you need to put in place? What strategies, what processes, what procedures, etc. So we'll have within the Razzoo network the HR experts that we're talking to. The fourth one is involving technology. So if you tune into our next free webinar, it'll be a snapshot again of what the detail of involving technology, and it will leverage from Periot partners and a number of different experiences that we've had in involving technology in healthcare businesses and turning things around. And finally, the very practical aspect of how do you plan the first 100 days, and then how do you plan the next one and the next one and the next one after that? Because as we said, we plan our recovery in waves. Finally, next step is that you can use that material to do a group study with your team. You can use the example in pivots, telehealth and distributions, financing, government grants, people and strategy that we're going to cover through those 5 courses. And you can pull your team together and and take each of those areas and expand it out, explore it, see whether or not that has a role within your business, and talk to them. I think that there's nothing that gives so much hope to management teams as a future plan forward. Do you want to add anything to this, John?
No, it is one of those ones where you really need your team, and it's not necessarily just your employees or people around you. It's also your greater team as well. Whether or not you've got independent advisors, your virtual board, which some of our clients have sort of done as well, and just everyone around you. I guess the more you sort of communicate these and get their feedback from everyone, the more it becomes real as well. and those actions become you become accountable for a lot of those actions by having and including those people that you trust. And again, just making sure that it's the ones that you want to include in your journey moving forward.
Perfect. That's a perfect segue to the roundtable. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the roundtable?
Yeah, so with the roundtable, it's essentially a group call. It's going to be limited to a certain number of people. I think
5 during April. Yeah.
5 during April, and it's essentially it's going to be done under Chatham rules as well. So everything that gets spoken around that won't be sort of can't be used for anything apart from purely informational purposes and not attributable to anyone. So it's essentially an open platform where you can discuss your business and ways to really in a much more sort of personalized environment. Ways to implement certain aspects, or if you have any questions that or challenges or problems that you're sort of wanting to solve outside of your your internal teams, this is probably the platform. It'll involve a cross section of different allied and professional within the health services. So it'll give you a good cross section of what other people are doing, and taking best practice from a different but similar industry as well, and how you're able to maybe implement that in your own business. There's also going to,
sorry, you go.
And there's also, I guess, your one-on-one consulting as well, where one-on-one essentially means one and you and possibly your executive team as well, which is specific to your business, I guess. So yeah,
that's right. Your executive and the Razzoo advisory or board of advisors executives. So so you essentially met by like-minded peers. And I think what John said before, you are the sum of the 5 people that you hang out the most with. And I think in these times, it's absolutely critical that you have cutting edge thinking, new markets, world best thinking in terms of approach. And you get that through the network that Razzoo has, and it's each individual partners like MediBusiness covering different states and different markets, Electo having experience and exposure to different business and industries. So if you have any questions, definitely if you want to ask more questions for our next topic, please send them through to us. We're quite interested to find out what people who are new to the Razzoo, MediBusiness and Electo Finance community is. If you in particular want to prep for the technology section, then email us at Periot Partners. John, any closing words or advice for how people can spend this time this weekend?
No, I think it's really thinking about what it is in their business that they're actually doing really well in, but also once where they need challenges, and then really just being honest with those, and then sort of working out what it is that you want, and then seek out the advice and help that you can. A lot of it is free advice, so make the most of the resources that you've got, and definitely don't be shy to send questions across.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to seeing you in our future free webinar series, and of course at the roundtable if that's where you need your business to go. Feel free to contact us, and we'll be seeing you soon. Thanks for your time this morning. Cheers.